There's been more fighting on the ground inside southern Lebanon today, a day after Israel announced its ground operations in Lebanon. The Israeli Defense Forces say that they've been using precision-guided munitions and close-range engagements inside of Lebanon. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has responded to Iran's airstrikes that happened late Tuesday when it fired around 180 missiles at Israel. Speaking at the opening of a cabinet meeting, the Israeli Prime Minister says Iran does not understand his country's determination to retaliate against its enemies. In his words, Iran made a big mistake and will pay for it. Israel's allies have since condemned the attack, including U.S. President Joe Biden, who says he is fully supportive of Israel. Meanwhile, Iran's UN ambassador Amir Sayed Irvani has justified his country's missile attack on Israel, saying that Iran acted in self-defense. On the other hand, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, has equally condemned Iran's attacks on his country, saying Israel will respond in a painful manner. But he called Iran a terrorist state and declared Iran responsible for the deaths of innocent civilians across the globe.
Just hours ago, the Iranian regime launched an unprecedented assault on Israel, launching close to 200 ballistic missiles at our civilian population. An attack on this scale has not been seen since the Blitz of London. 10 million people were forced into bomb shelters. Imagine the entire population of New York City in 10 minutes have to seek shelter. Children, babies, elderly. That's what happened in Israel. The Islamic regime in Iran has now shown the world its true face. They are a terrorist state. For years, they have armed terrorists and rogue states. They are responsible for the death of innocent civilians across the globe, from Europe's war zones to terror attacks in the Middle East, from embassies in Latin America to assault on US personnel. Iran's blood-stained fingerprints are everywhere. Until now, they have hidden behind proxies, but the mask has dropped. They have exposed themselves directly, launching hundreds of missiles into civilian areas. Their evil is now laid bare for all to see. I have called for an emergency session of the Security Council to convene as soon as possible to discuss this unprecedented attack and to issue a clear, unequivocal condemnation of Iran. Let me be very clear. We will defend our people. We will act. Iran will soon feel the consequences of their actions. The response will be painful.
In another development, Israel has declared the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres persona non grata. Guterres has been banned from entering Israel over his response to Iran's ballistic missile bombardment. A statement from Israel's Foreign Minister Israel Katz said Guterres, an anti-Israel Secretary General, described him as an anti-Israel Secretary General who lends support to terrorists. Guterres had commented on social media platform X, condemning the broadening of the Middle East conflict with escalation after escalation, and that these must stop. He was responding to Iran firing about 180 missiles into Israel on Tuesday. He had noted that the region absolutely needed a ceasefire, but did not specifically mention the Iran attack. Israel Katz had declared in his statement that anyone who cannot unequivocally condemn Iran's heinous attack on Israel does not deserve to step foot on Israeli soil. His words. Tuesday's attack by Iran is the latest in a series of escalations, starting almost a year ago with attacks on Israel by Hamas, and recently involving increased fighting between Iran-backed Hezbollah and Israel. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian has added his voice to reactions surrounding the latest strikes by his country on the nation of Israel. Earlier today, he said Israel would face a harsh reaction if it did not stop what he called its crimes. He made the comment in Qatar on a scheduled trip. Pezeshkian told state television the first goal in Doha is to discuss bilateral ties and then sign agreements with the Qatari government. He'll also be attending a summit of the Asia Cooperation Dialogue. And from Iran's supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he made his first appearance today since the strikes on Tuesday, but he made no mention of those strikes. Rather, he gave his opinion on the causes of conflict and wars in the region, saying, "The root of the problem which causes these conflicts, wars, tensions is the presence of the same people who claim they want peace and tranquility in the region. I'm referring to America and some European countries." He then took a swipe at Israel, saying, if they, that's Israel, remove their evil from this region, without a doubt, these conflicts, these wars, these clashes will disappear completely. The countries of the region can manage themselves, manage their region, live together in peace, health, and well-being. Khamenei has been moved to a secure location since Israel assassinated Iran's close ally, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, last week. We have a response from U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris following Iran's attacks on Israel on Tuesday. Speaking in Washington, D.C., Ms. Harris told reporters Iran is a dangerous and destabilizing force in the Middle East and that Washington is committed to Israel's security.
So today, Iran launched approximately 200 ballistic missiles at Israel in a reckless and brazen attack. I condemn this attack unequivocally. I'm clear-eyed. Iran is a destabilizing, dangerous force in the Middle East, and today's attack on Israel only further demonstrates that fact. Earlier today, I was in the Situation Room with President Biden and our national security team as we monitored the attack in real time and ensured that the protection of U.S. personnel in the region is paramount. I fully support President Biden's order for the U.S. military to shoot down Iranian missiles targeting Israel, just as we did in April. We are still assessing the impact, but initial indications are that Israel, with our assistance, was able to defeat this attack. Our joint defenses have been effective, and this operation and successful cooperation saved many innocent lives.
The British Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has declared his support for Israel following the latest attacks by Iran. A spokesperson for his office says that Mr. Starmer spoke with his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, on Tuesday afternoon, and the leaders discussed the escalating situation across the Middle East. Starmer also spoke with Jordanian King Abdullah, and they underscored the urgent need for a ceasefire in both Lebanon and in Gaza.
In the last few hours, the Iranian regime has launched over 200 ballistic missiles at civilian targets in Israel. It's too soon to assess the impact fully, but I utterly condemn this attempt by the Iranian regime to harm innocent Israelis. We stand with Israel and we recognize her right to self-defense in the face of this aggression. Iran must stop these attacks, together with its proxies like Hezbollah. Iran has menaced the Middle East for far too long. Chaos and destruction brought not just to Israel, but to the people they live amongst in Lebanon and beyond. Make no mistake, Britain stands full square against such violence. We support Israel's reasonable demand for the security of its people, because I am deeply concerned that the region is on the brink, and I'm deeply concerned about the risk of miscalculation. The situation in Lebanon is increasingly grave. I want to repeat my advice to British nationals who are still in Lebanon. You must leave now.
Joining us now is former Permanent Secretary at the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi. He joins us from Abuja. Ambassador, it's great to see you. Has Iran's direct attacks on Israel escalated conflict in the Middle East?
Good evening, Marachi, and thanks for having me. In so many ways, the simple answer to your question is yes. It has escalated the situation in the Middle East. And we should all prepare for a possible worst scenario, because Israel has a history of retaliating to any attack against Israel. And I think that Iran has made a mistake, and I agree with Netanyahu for the first time. It was, in my view, it was very, very rational what they did. Over the last couple of weeks, a number of commentators has commended Iran for its restraint. But look, I really have no yes. They've made a commitment to retaliate for the killing of the leader of the Palestinians. But one had thought that they would be rational, knowing fully well that Israel has been looking for an opportunity to actually strike Iran for many years now. And now Iran has just given them that opportunity on a platter of gold. It's unfortunate, and as a person, I have never liked leaders who did not take into consideration a number of things before they make decisions. And this is certainly one, because the 200 missiles they launched into Israel did not cause any reasonable, damage. But it has emboldened, particularly Netanyahu, who's been looking for an opportunity for years to go after Iran. And regrettably, and I'm sorry to say, Iran will pay a deadly price for this. Very unfortunate. And this is what is going around the world. You have leaders who put self before nation, and they jeopardize the lives of their people by their actions. This is, for me, as a person, this is unfortunate. There are so many things they could have done. They could have actually stayed out of it for now, but haven't gotten involved. They should be prepared for the consequences of their actions.
I think what is even more worrying, Ambassador, is the gunmen who appeared, I think, in Hebron on the ground, and they killed about 6 people, I believe, were killed because they just opened fire randomly on just innocent civilians. So it is not just the air attack. There also seems to be a ground movement against Israel. But there are also some analysts who think that this war is all a plan by Iran. The attacks on Israel's southern Israel back on October 7th, 2023, the attacks by Hezbollah on the 8th. This has all been part of Iran's grand plan, an excuse to go directly, targets directly Israel and draw it into this conflict in the Middle East.
Amarachi, I will not dispute your brilliant, position. But the question remains, what is Iran's goal? Look at the destruction that has been caused since the attack by Hamas almost a year ago. Look at the number of people, the destruction that has been brought upon the innocent people of Gaza, particularly women and children. Look at what is going on in Lebanon now. The massive destruction that is going on in a number of areas in Lebanon. And then the question is, what is Iran's main goal? What is the end game of this action that they have taken? My view is that, look, there are so many ways they could have, if they want to, continue this battle with Israel, there are so many ways they could have done this, because Israel has a history of retaliate. They call it that they will always defend themselves. And the worst part of the story is that under Netanyahu, who has his own, interest in this game, they have become even more brutal, the way they respond to some of these attacks. Look at what they've done to Gaza. Look at what they've done to Gaza, and you will see exactly what they will do to Lebanon. So my position is, look, maybe it's a general failure in the world that you have leaders who put, again, I said it before, who put self, before nation. As I contemplate these things, my mind goes back, for example, to the Cuban Missile Crisis, a different scenario completely. But when you read some of the books on the Cuban Missile Crisis, you see how leaders took rational and incremental decisions to ensure that they do not escalate the crisis. But in today's world, leaders do not actually think out the whole scenario properly. They have only one ambition, self. The Israeli leaders are doing the same thing. And to compound it all, the Iranian leaders are doing the same thing. For example, that between Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and other places, not to talk of Israel itself, they have this, iron dome that you cannot penetrate. And you decided to launch 200, missiles that caused no damage. But when these guys retaliate, pray to God that you have the same line of defense for your people. If not, you've just wasted the lives of your people. Leaders should learn to be rational in the decisions they take, especially as it concerns the nation and the lives of their people. This is so unfortunate that we're in this kind of crisis. The Americans will not be, honest brokers in this business. It's an election year in the United States, for goodness sake. So you can understand why the United States has been so powerless in helping to sort out these problems. So, and unfortunately, I heard your report about Israel's attitude to the United Nations Secretary General. So we are in a situation where there's practically nobody that can talk to both sides to calm down. So we just all sit down and wait and witness the consequences of what will happen. Israelis retaliation. But I repeat what I have said. Iran has just handed over Israel a golden opportunity to go after some of the targets, particularly its nuclear program, that under Netanyahu, they've been trying to go after for years, but they were restrained by the Americans. Listen to what the Americans are saying now. They are not ready to put any restraint on the Israelis anymore.
You raised three very important points: the American response, the United Nations Secretary General, who has refused to condemn Iran's attacks on Israel, but has also been unable to rein in Israel's actions in the Middle East. Let's talk a bit about that for a minute and why the UN seems so powerless. We do understand it's the backing of the US. But then again, do you think that the United Nations as a global organization has already failed with regards to the conflicts in the Middle East, which we're now looking at could be, an all-out conflict, a war possibly?
Amarachi, I said the world today lacks leaders with empathy for their people, leaders who act rationally and who possibly take incremental decisions because of the consequences, of what's going on right now in the Middle East. You find a situation where Netanyahu particularly has his own ambition, which is now woven with national interest. And so at the end of it all, already, by the way, he has actually, in the recent times, he has gained considerable support for his actions in comparison to where he was more than about 3 or 4 months ago, because of his determination to revenge against anybody that hits at Israel. And so he's also pursuing his personal interest is now interwoven with national interest. And that's a dangerous game for leaders to play, because at the end of the day, the people of the country suffer. The world itself suffers. Well, look, as for the United Nations Secretary General, I've always had my criticism of him, because when the war in
Ukraine,
Russia was started, I thought that we will see this gentleman do a kind of shuttle diplomacy around the main actors and the world to see how that could be, arrested. That did not happen. And again, when this war started, I'm not too sure when last he was in the Middle East. I think the only time he tried to go there was was trying to see that humanitarian activities were maintained. So he had already earned the anger of the Israelis. So banning him now is just part of the, of the fact that they have long ago dismissed him as quote unquote, as a supporter of terrorism. But look, in his position, he's trying to balance everything he says. And he's been very consistent in calling on the leaders, to maintain some modicum of peace and to try that this issue should be negotiated, they should come to the negotiating table. But unfortunately, we cannot blame the gentleman because it will take a lot. Look, if Netanyahu could define the United States that has been supporting it for so many years, by the way, let's give credit to Netanyahu. Netanyahu knows very well that the Americans will not dare do anything irrational or stupid to Israel at this time because it's an election year in the United States. And so he's getting away with whatever he wants to do. The president of the United States so many times have tried his best to negotiate, to ensure some negotiations and put so many peace proposals on the table. Every peace proposal has been killed by Netanyahu himself, not by Hamas. Every time he moves the goalpost, every time he moves the goalpost. So you have a situation where personal interest, personal agenda has become interwoven with national interest. And when you have that kind of situation, the consequences of it is what we are now seeing. Look, we all should be concerned about the massive destruction of lives and properties in the Middle East, whether in Gaza and now in Lebanon. And look, we are going to add Iran to it sooner than later, because the Israelis are not going to back down. They are really going to hit Iran very hard. I repeat that word. They are going to hit Iran very hard. And the Iranians will regret their action. They are celebrating now. I sincerely hope they still have, they'll be prepared to celebrate more when the Israelis come after them. For me, it was the most irrational thing leaders can do to their people.
The Israeli ambassador to the United Nations says Israel will respond in a painful manner, further confirming what you said. Israel, of course, is preparing its targets against Iran. But let's talk about the way forward. I mean, at this point, tensions are high. Emotions are also rife as well. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is infuriated about Iran's defiance. I mean, this attack on Tuesday was a defiance of Israel going directly to hit the country. What could help to douse the tensions at the moment, Ambassador?
Practically nothing until Israel achieves its goal. Unfortunately, nobody knows exactly what the goals are. Nothing. The goals are what Netanyahu decides. And he's been shifting the goalpost. They were close to a peace agreement, to a negotiated settlement, until he came up with this very small, innocuous territory borderline in, I'm trying to remember the name, in Egypt. That killed the last effort to make, for a negotiated settlement. And now, again, he has an opportunity not to listen to anybody, but to go out. Look, where we are today, nobody is going to stop Netanyahu from retaliating against Iran. So let's agree on that. Second point is that it's going to be, as Israelis have said, very, very painful. If you see what the Israelis have done in Gaza, you should be sure that they are probably going to do worse things when they get to Iran. That is the honest truth. Because for Netanyahu itself, he is gaining popularity for the defense of Israel. He's remaining as the longest prime minister, which has been his ambition, at the expense of the nation itself. When October 7th or October 6th happened last year, a reasonable prime minister who took his eyes off the ball should have resigned, but he tried his best to create a different narrative by ensuring that they went into this war, and now he's projecting that anytime that, listen to the language of the Israeli generals and how they talk and the narratives they create. you will know that they are not going to stop at anything until they achieve whatever is their objective. And at least, if we do not know the end result of this, they want to destroy Hamas, which I think that they will not eventually be able to do. They want to destroy Hezbollah. The truth, history has taught us that these organizations, no matter what they suffer now, they will certainly regroup, they will rebuild, and a couple of years from now, we'll be back to the same story.
Ambassador Joe Keshi, and thank you enough for your analysis on the program today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Have a good evening.
Welcome back to The World Today. We're staying with our coverage of Israel's war on Lebanon, plus the Iranian attacks on Israel yesterday. Now, video released by the Israeli army today purportedly showed Israeli Defense Forces ground operation in Lebanon. Now, this video has not been independently verified as to the location or the date when it was filmed. But just a reminder here that on Tuesday, October 1st, the military announced that after weeks of intensifying airstrikes, commandos had crossed into Lebanon to conduct targeted raids in areas close to the border. Hours later, it confirmed special forces units had been operating in Lebanon for months. Israeli military spokesperson Daniel Hagari said that the ground raids will continue until tens of thousands of uprooted Israelis living near the border are able to return safely to their homes. Ukraine's intelligence military has released a video also showing Ukrainians exiting a plane in Poland after being evacuated from Lebanon. Ukraine's military intelligence agency said 134 citizens were evacuated. Israel was hit Tuesday evening by rockets launched from Iran following a ground incursion of the Israeli armed forces into South Lebanon, where they clashed with the Iran-backed Hezbollah group. The operation followed intense airstrikes that have devastated Hezbollah's leadership, including longtime chief Hassan Nasrallah, who was killed in Beirut last week. Well, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has ordered a military aircraft to be deployed immediately to evacuate its citizens from Israel and other parts of the Middle East amid escalating tension. Yoon met with his national security and economic advisors over the Middle East conflict and called for a swift but measured response to any impacts on the country's energy supply, trade, and supply chains. Earlier today, South Korea's foreign ministry urged citizens in Israel and Lebanon to immediately leave by any means available. Government data for 2023 showed there are about 572 South Koreans in Israel, including permanent residents and Israeli passport holders, and about 214 citizens in Lebanon. Other glass siding of the light rail station where two Palestinian gunmen shot up a main street in South Tel Aviv, killing at least 7 people, remains splintered. A sign next to it scribbled in marker reads that we're simply waiting for the train, referring to the people who were killed there. Just today, hours before sundown and the start of the Jewish New Year, people gathered and lit memorial candles on the sidewalk of the popular boulevard in the neighborhood of Jaffa, known for its mixed population of Jews and Arabs. Police said the attack was carried out by 2 Palestinians aged 19 and 25 from Hebron in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. They said the gunmen boarded the light rail and opened fire on passengers, then continued on foot to attack pedestrians before being stopped by security patrol and an armed civilian who killed one attacker and critically wounded the other. The shooting occurred around the time of an Iranian missile attack on Israel that set off sirens and explosions nationwide, and as Israeli forces thrust into South Lebanon to hammer the Iran-backed Hezbollah group, while continuing their almost year-long war against Palestinian Hamas militants in Gaza.
I really need to get up here and light some candles. It's called soul candles. Also to help the souls to came all the way to God safely, and also to bring some light in these darkest days. And today it's a holiday in Israel, so I wish it's gonna be a quiet one. and I really hope for peace.
This is the station I use every day. I've been here like 20 minutes before the terrorist attack. I was about to go to sleep, and then I heard the gunshots. I was absolutely terrified. We are used to a bit of pistol, something like light, but yesterday was horrifying. Then we got the sirens.
In the middle of missile attacks and terrorist attacks. I live 50 meters away from here, and the feeling is just like there's no security in this place. Like anything can happen. I'm not frightened. I mostly feel like it's just shocking and overwhelming, and there's really nothing we can do about it. Scary.
Let's check in now on what's been going on in Lebanon. The VOA's Jacob Russell is in Beirut, from where he joins us. Jacob, great to see you, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. Have there been more Israeli strikes on Lebanon today?
Yes, they have. And last night, there were quite heavy strikes on various neighborhoods in Beirut, including the Dahya neighborhood and the Shweifat, which is adjacent to that. And today also, but predominantly last night.
Yeah, and strikes have also been reported in some parts of Beirut, I think sometime this week. Can you confirm that there are areas where these strikes are happening are areas with fewer human populations?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think most of the strikes have been concentrated around the neighborhoods that I mentioned previously, because the Hezbollah does tend to have both military and administrative infrastructure in those areas, and a population that in general is sympathetic or actively supports them. Those areas have been depopulated essentially to a great degree because people have left out of fear, out of fear of Israeli bombs. However, the strikes have not been totally confined to those areas at all, and they have occurred also in central Beirut. They have occurred next to, those areas run often adjacent to significant highways that are used by a great deal of traffic. So no, I don't think you can say that the strikes have been confined to less populated areas.
How have Lebanese people been reacting to Iran's attacks on Israel yesterday? I know that there were celebrations in Iran as to, the strikes hitting Israel. But for Lebanon, for which Iran says it is avenging the death of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, as well as other Lebanese who have been killed by the Israeli strikes over the course of a few weeks, how have Lebanese people been reacting to that?
It's hard to make any statement that unifies the opinion of Lebanese people, because Lebanon is quite a divided country internally, and there are different populations which have different political leanings. I would say that amongst a great deal of the population, there is a feeling of relief. There were reports of celebratory gunfire in Beirut last night as the attack was reported. There is a feeling amongst the population which supports Hezbollah, most of which is drawn from the Shiite part of the population, that Iran had somewhat abandoned them up till then. They had been expecting a response to the assassination of Nasrallah, to the strikes that had been taking place before that, and they hadn't got one. So there was a feeling of relief from then. Amongst others, there's just a feeling of fear. They don't want to be dragged into a war. They recognize that they already are in a war, and there's a feeling of fear and tension.
Have you heard anything regarding the Lebanese government or the Lebanese army supporting Iran in those strikes and those retaliatory strikes against Israel?
No, the Lebanese government is a caretaker government at the moment, and it is largely defunct, to be honest. The Lebanese army has been severely damaged by years of economic crisis, by soldiers leaving because they simply weren't getting paid, basically. So the Lebanese army is not a powerful force. It's nowhere near as powerful as Hezbollah, even after the blows that Hezbollah has suffered in the last weeks. The Lebanese government, is able to do the bare minimum to keep services in the country running. No, they have not proactively supported Iran in this attack.
What is the feeling across, especially Beirut, where you are, as they're watching what's going on? they're watching Iran defend Lebanon and Hamas. And as they're watching Israel attack Lebanon and hit various targets across the country, and also hitting targets in Yemen as well, targets in the Houthi rebels. What is the feeling generally about what's going on? Do they feel that perhaps, these strikes could escalate into a proper conflict? Are they looking at a war? Are people making preparations to protect themselves or to evacuate?
There's a whole range of reactions. Many people have left. Many people are making preparations at home. It has to be recognized that Lebanon is embroiled in a war now. Many people are still talking about whether or not a regional war will break out. It by most definitions, has already broken out. There is also a feeling, however, that that Israel has been taking actions in the past year since the October 7th attack, which have served to destabilize the region themselves. And whereas Hezbollah, there's a popular feeling in Lebanon that Hezbollah has been calibrating its responses to Israel quite carefully, has been not always successfully making efforts to avoid civilian casualties, and has been making efforts to stay within the kind of unofficial rules of engagement that had been established in the years before this conflict broke out. Whilst Israel has been crossing those lines on a regular basis, and that this situation was inevitable. There are not many people in Lebanon that are surprised by what's going on now.
You talked a bit about evacuations earlier, and I know that the US is preparing to evacuate citizens. The UK is sending down troops to be on standby in Cyprus to evacuate citizens as well. Other countries are also talking about evacuation. Because you talk about, the foreign nationals who are leaving the country, in addition to locals who are also leaving. Where are they going?
Well, foreign nationals are mostly returning, if indirectly, to their country of residence. The Lebanese who can leave, many Lebanese have a second passport. Many don't, but many do because the diaspora is so large. So they may be joining family in the diaspora, which could be anywhere in the world, frankly. They may be, there are, for example, people who own yachts have started offering trips to Cyprus for quite inflated prices, but there are people who are taking boats to Cyprus and then making an onward journey from there. Iraq has waived the visa requirements for Lebanese citizens if they want to go to Iraq. So really everybody is making their own plan, and there is not, as I said before, the Lebanese government is a caretaker government and is either incapable or unwilling to offer much national guidance and assistance. So really, people are sorting their plans out for themselves.
Jacob, thanks a lot for speaking with us, and do stay safe.
Thank you.